Hi, this is Rob from WorkOS. In this short video, I'll demonstrate how to install the new WorkOS Java SDK and use it to quickly build a WorkOS SSO integration. We'll get started by adding the WorkOS Java SDK as a dependency to our application. In this example, we'll be using Gradle to manage our build pipeline. The SDK is hosted on the Maven Central repository, so we'll configure that here. Now that Gradle knows to install dependencies from Maven Central, we can add the WorkOS SDK. We'll also need a simple web server for our SSO integration. Here we'll use a lightweight library called Javelin, but any web server will do. Now that our dependencies are installed, we can start the integration with WorkOS. First, we'll import the two libraries we need for the integration. Now that we have our libraries available, we can instantiate a new Javelin web server and the WorkOS client. We'll need to provide a WorkOS API key in order to create the WorkOS client. API keys are managed in the WorkOS dashboard, and for this example, I've stored the API key as an environment variable. Along with the API key, we'll need the WorkOS client ID that is also available in the dashboard. We'll also fetch that from an environment variable and store it for later use. Now we're ready to create our SSO integration. We'll need two endpoints, one for initiating the login flow and one for handling the callback of a successful login attempt. Here we'll use Javelin to create a handler for the root path of our web application. Inside the handler, we'll use the WorkOS client to generate an authentication URL using our client ID and our desired callback URL. There are multiple ways to specify which WorkOS connection we want to leverage. Here we'll use the provider configuration and set it to Google OAuth. Now we call the build method to generate the authentication URL and use Javelin to redirect. Now we must define the callback endpoint to handle the response from the identity provider. We'll create another handler with Javelin, where we'll pull out the code query parameter. This code will allow us to retrieve the profile information of the authenticated user using the WorkOS client. We'll use the getProfile method, passing in the code query parameter that we got from the request and the WorkOS client ID that we defined previously. As you can see, the profile and token data type returned contains multiple fields, including name and email of the authenticated user. We'll simply return a string in the handler to assert that our integration is working correctly. Now we can open up our terminal and use Gradle to run our application. We'll visit the root path of our web server, which will hit the first handler we defined previously. As we can see, it redirects us to the identity provider login page as expected. After I finish the login flow, it will redirect us to the callback page we defined, showing the email of the authenticated user. And that's it. We now have a working SSO integration using the WorkOS Java SDK. For more fully featured example applications, please visit the Java Example Applications repository, which will be linked in the description below.